My name is Taline. I'm Tamizian, that's my surname. I'm Armenian. I was born in California, but I grew up in the Middle East, where there's lots of wars going on now, and living and studying in very arty environment all my life, but not having necessarily the right opportunities in the beginning made me actually want to do it. So when I was 18, I was studying fashion. I studied fashion design in a French school called S-Mode. But everyone discovered around me that I was an artist. So it was really miserable to balance that. So I was designing, but also I was doing art at the same time. Also, because you're a designer, you need to make money with that. Whereas if you're an artist, you have a much longer journey in front of you. So it's always that conflict. So I grew up doing that, and also graduated English literature and philosophy, and studied philosophy in that university in Aleppo. While doing that, I was traveling constantly to Europe with my family. And then I did some fashion studies in Beirut also. Finished the school, university, finished the fashion school. At the end of the fashion school, I was kicked out because my teacher told me, it's too creative, I can't compare your work with other people's work. So here was another problem. And obviously, when you're 19 years old and something like that happens to you, you kind of try to figure out where next to go. So she advised me to go to St. Martin's. Indeed, she kicked me out, said, you only fit in St. Martin's. At the time, living in the Middle East, I didn't know what St. Martin's was really. So I managed to go to Paris after, work with some designers who work with Galliano and other various important artists. And they were iconographers, Armenian designers who used to do iconography, i.e. art, at the same time. So they channeled my work in some way where advised me what to do next. But all the portfolios I did after that fashion school kick out, it was only self-initiated projects. So, and then obviously I stumbled into work life because you had to work. So every time I applied for design jobs, I was refused or not even getting answers from anybody. On the other hand, people saying you're very talented. So it was always this kind of way. So I worked as a stylist, I worked in shops, luxury shops for years. And you get more and more miserable. So you come home after you work and you start saying, right, I'm going to continue my own project, no matter what happens. And the next day, 7 a.m, you're up again working, and you come back so continuing that, I almost did like a self-initiated university while going to St. Martin's on courses constantly. So that I kept that, together going. And then when I did some artworks, etc., on my own, only after coming to London, because obviously in the Middle East, it was very suppressive to the art thing. It was people didn't necessarily appreciate it as much, although there's a lot of art there and there's a lot of underground art, but because it wasn't appreciated so much, or probably the freedom of thinking wasn't enough to explore that kind of thing. So only when I arrived in London I started to paint suddenly. But paintings are very, very violent colors, very, all that. And what helped me also that actually was in a surrounding with lots of NGOs, a lot of art scene, a lot of people like that helped me to understand and make deeper understanding, not only academic wise, but actual, in real life. And London opened up that. So when it was 2009, I decided to go to university again. So I resigned from my work, shocking people in like time when people were like desperate for jobs, and I went to LCC 1 year of post kind of graduate studies in visual communication, trying to figure out how to mix between art and fashion, because and still didn't realize that years and years of designing on the side jewelry, that was actually my career to come, which I didn't realize because I was doing it for fun and etc., and really creating weird things, but only in fine jewelry. I never worked in costume jewelry. So, and one day I was in an exhibition, obviously halfway after university, graduated, back to the job world, back to these miserable places. From the job world, I went to this exhibition where somebody met me there with lots of high-profile guests and people, and he was interested with what I'm trying to say. He gave me his card, which I didn't check who he was. I gave him his card, and next day I received a call saying, would you be interested to come to this party? I didn't want to go first. I was a bit afraid, And then I asked some mutual contact, and he said, go. And so I went, and suddenly I was sat on a table, and kind of people drinking to my talent. And I said, what's happening here? He said, I'm going to ask this talented artist to design jewelry for us. This was the managing director of Bentley & Skinner, and that's the breaking point where it came from, not doing what I really wanted to do, or doing it in the shadows and then doing it in real life. So he offered me to do a collaboration after. Obviously, this was when seeing my artwork and comparing it, and obviously all that design studies went into that afterwards. Design studies, it doesn't matter whether you study product design or fashion design or jewelry design or even gemology. Eventually there's a methodology of thinking and planning and researching and experimentation that you actually gain from that, and you input it in something else that you're going to do. So I started, and then we did the Love collection together. This is the same person who actually made the diamond skull of Damien Hirst, and he's quite an art and design connoisseur at the same time. So in both worlds, he opened up this very interesting horizon, and I got so encouraged to do that. Just I continued my art in a much different pace, and now I'm preparing my art show, and so altogether it kind of integrated. So what I do is I do bespoke jewelry mostly, and I'm planning a collection right now. And while doing that, the same people who collect my jewelry most of them are interested in my art. So they get an artwork, and they get at the same time the artwork of the jewelry, and then the jewelry comes up, and then it's a very integrated kind of thing. But also there's a darker side to my art when it's not the design part of things. It's not decorative. It's not stylization anymore. It's much more liberated thing. It's a contemporary art, and it's quite edgy also. It talks a lot about torture, I guess. Probably the students or the people who are going to watch this are much younger than I am. I'm 33 years old. And being a generation, I lived in a very interesting kind of old and new. It's almost like the vintage kind of generation where they crossed between the Facebook age and the very technological. But at the same time, I lived in an emergency rule of a dictatorship, which is a totally different planet. It's a planet torture, if you know what I mean. And at the same time, there was a lot of beautiful things in that old world that comes out in my art that people don't comprehend where that came from. But actually, it's different social structures, different, much more closer people together, much more interesting kind of, warmer world, if you know what I mean, the east side of the things. And then suddenly the amazing thinking and the academia of the West, and so it all kind of comes together.
If you're gonna give us some more information when it comes to students and how students would become, if you can give some advice, maybe sort of like a 3-step thing of how the student can come to where you are.
The most important thing is education, of course. So they're in the right place, the fact that they're students. In my opinion, it's not a necessary thing to have an MA in what they're doing, but it's always interesting to go to work experience in the areas that they studied, only in the areas they studied, even if it means free internships. It's much more important than doing something else totally just because it's a job. That's the first thing. And while doing that, prepare for an MA or for a next stage, because if you go immediately to after postgraduate studies or whatever it is, you will never benefit as much as actually you knew why you're doing that and how you're using that. There is no point. The best thing to do is just to keep going. I mean, it's, remember, you keep evolving in what you do, and don't say, okay, I'm gonna just focus on only one thing. It's always important to do one thing technically very well. Like I paint, that's my kind of scale, and I research trends. That's something very strong I do, let's say. But every single person, when they have another interest, always try to find the cross section between the two and how they can leverage that in order to make a living or make a product or make it the final aim they want. And I wouldn't worry too much about the length that takes, because you'll be surprised how suddenly it clicks and you find your niche, you find your, if they're design students and if they come up with one product, one jacket, one whatever, it's much more important to actually highlight that in the real world, show it, and turn it into something where there's almost like a manifestation of what they're doing. Then keep drawing and hiding things and keeping them away. It's not good to do that. Even if it means like a very scruffy collaboration with someone and say, right, just put it out there. I designed sometimes, a long time ago, a diamond ring, long time ago. And every time people see me wearing that, they start actually asking me about it and saying, okay, can you do that for us? Or can you do... So it always, the real actual product, you need to bring that in the surface, in the real life, because it's a very kind of very sad thing that most fashion students, or a lot of students, or design students, they keep drawing and hiding things because they don't have actually the capacity or the money to produce it. But the minimum that they can produce, they should do, because that's that's kind of the first step to say to someone, here, this is what I have. Or if this guy, for instance, didn't see my artworks, then even if I explain forever about my talent, he would have never realized what can be done, so it's very important. And to keep going to names, don't be intimidated or scared, because a lot of big names need the young talent, even if they kind of in the beginning they will never reply, or just try to find someone who works there, try to befriend them, get to them, show your work, push it for free, gift them whatever, and then eventually they're gonna go like, right, this is the opportunity. It might come after 2 years. They might give you a call, but never say, oh my God, I'm not going to this place because it's too intimidating, too shiny and glossy, and I'm only a student. And never say that, because that's as much as it's very tough, but it's always a challenge anyway. Even if you're quite got somewhere, it's always a challenge because it's very competitive. You can't rest for a minute. It will pass by. So yeah, that's all I can say.